And as you know, I mean, my wife's here. She doesn't dress like a Puritan or something. But at the same time, I can tell you that she and I are in a transition. Because we've honestly, you get around to trying to look at different aspects of your life. And one of the things is, what is it supposed to look like to be a feminine, beautiful woman with discretion and wisdom and nobility? And you could dress a woman in a skirt that went all the way down to her heels, and she could still be sensual and ungodly. I mean, nothing's going to cover up a wicked heart. But how should the daughters of God dress themselves? And some people have gone really, I think the other side, and they just wear denim skirts and white tennis shoes and, put their hair a certain way, and everybody's a homeschooling mom. I don't think that's what the Scriptures had intended either. But I will tell you this. Take simplicity. Take modesty. Take discretion. Put within that beauty and elegance. Throw away from it all sensuality and luxury and extravagance, and try to find, where does the Lord want you to be? And I'll tell you this, just as a man. A woman who most people would say is not that attractive in her face or in her body. If you see nobility in her, if you see discretion and wisdom in her clothing, in her way of being, it is attractive. It is pleasant. It is. It is. A noble, virtuous woman who just doesn't have it on the inside, but it affects the way she dresses, it affects the way she holds herself. And young ladies that are here, man, boys don't play with you. They don't wrestle with you. They don't come up and grab you around the neck. They don't do all these kinds of things. You are very special, very proper. Not in that wrong sort of way. There's a dignity to you. So don't allow the world to tell you how to dress because they just want to make you sensual. Don't tell people how don't let people tell you how boys are supposed to treat you. Let God tell you. And you demand that. Now, fathers, here's something else. If you treat their mother very poorly, then don't expect your daughter to rise above you in the mate she chooses. She needs to be able to look at you and then look at all these 20-year-old boys that haven't got, the brain God gave a goose. She needs to be able to look at them and go, "You do what?" When that boy says, "I love you." "You what? Love me?" You can't even spell the word love. Go look at my dad. Follow him around for 2 years. He'll show you what love is all about. Do you see? Guys, we do such a disservice to our daughters. We all do. When we neglect their mothers or treat their mothers common. So don't be angry one day when some guy comes along and treats your daughter as common. Now, look what it says here. It says, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or costly garments. Now, does this mean, as some has interpreted, a woman can never braid her hair? Well, if you go into the Greek world, you will see some braiding that went on that literally, it was frightening. The woman looked like Medusa. I am not kidding. They braided hair they would spend days braiding this hair up. And it was going all over the place. It looked like snakes coming out of her head. That's what Satan will always do to a culture. What he's talking about here is not that you can't braid your hair. He's talking about just the simplicity of it. Not extravagant. And then there's gold and pearls are costly garments. Now, what does this mean? Well, I see that the servant of Abraham gave Isaac's bride some costly bracelets, some rings for her nose, go figure. So that wasn't treated as an ungodly thing. I think it goes back again to extravagance. Extravagance. And costly garments? No. Women should not be preoccupied with spending a lot of money on clothing. But you know what? A wise woman, a noble woman, can take a little bit of something and make it look pretty amazing. Remember the Proverbs 31 woman? She didn't just dress her household. She herself dressed in purple. But it was a frugality. A simple, like one time when Chad and I were on our honeymoon, I wanted to really I'm going to buy her something. So we go in this clothing store and there's this dress or skirt. I don't know the difference between a dress and a skirt. What was it? Was it a skirt or a dress? Skirt. Okay. I just don't know. I just can't figure that out. Or it's a skirt. And it was really pretty, and it just kind of went down long. It was really pretty. I said, why don't we get it? She looked at the price tag. She said, it's $85. We're not buying this. I said, good. I didn't know they cost that much. But guess what? A few weeks later, she found the same skirt, different color, exact same skirt, with the price tag still on it, in a Goodwill, I think it was, for $5. And I was like, praise the Lord. I'm like, here, honey, here's $10. Don't spend it all in one place. But it's amazing what a wise woman can do with almost nothing. And it's also amazing what a woman with no wisdom cannot do with everything. It's just amazing. And so, and it comes down, people always ask me, is it a sin for women to wear makeup? And I say, brother, it's a sin if some women don't wear makeup. An old preacher said one time, it never hurts to put a little paint on an old barn. But now, here's the point again. You can see when a woman uses makeup and there's discretion. And you can see another woman that looks like she just lost a paint gun war. And that's just what it comes down to. And then there needs to be a lot of grace when you make your decision. I remember one time I'd preached in Romania and God had really moved and saved a bunch of people and the meetings were all extended. And then the next year I came back and I brought my wife. My wife had some little earrings in and things like that. And this Romanian woman walked up and she goes, Brother Paul, you preach power of God in your life. How could you be married to a woman like this? And I was like, I'm stepping back because there's going to be a fight. And my wife was so wise. She got her in a headlock and pounded. No, I'm just kidding. This lady who said this was about 25, 30 years old, 25. And she looked just haggard. But, in her face you could see she was an attractive lady, but she was just haggardy. Just morose. And my wife goes, do you have a picture of yourself? The lady goes, yeah. Before I was converted. Charles said, can I see it? Lady said, yeah. Chada looked at the picture and it was a vibrant young lady, smiling, happy. Chada looked at it and she gave her back the picture and she said, I liked you better when you were lost. And then she came back to her and said, is this what Jesus does to a person? Kills their joy? Makes them mean-spirited? Okay, you don't have any makeup and you don't have any earrings on. But you look, she didn't say this, but I know she was thinking it. You look like a zombie from the Dawn of the Dead movie. The fact of the matter is, this woman was in bondage. She had decided that she should wear longer dresses, and I think that's wonderful. And she had decided that you need to be very careful. I think that's wonderful. But look what she didn't have. She didn't have the good works as is proper for women making a claim to godliness. She didn't receive instruction well, and she wasn't submissive, and she didn't have a quiet. There was just no joy. There was no fruit of the Holy Spirit. So see, you can go through your wardrobe and decide what's decent and what's not, but if inside your heart is not right, you can't cover up your sin. You can't. Now, I want us to look over at 1 Peter chapter 3. Verse 1, in the same way, you wives, be submissive to your own husbands, so that even if any of them are disobedient to the word, they may be won without a word by the behavior of their wives. I want to tell you something. This makes me laugh. You think God isn't all wise? God, look what He says. He says, if any of them are disobedient to the word, He said, wives, they may be won without a word. How do women seek to change their husbands? With their tongue, with their words, isn't it? I've even seen women, husband, I'm telling you, you are going to be the leader of this home. Now get up and lead. And I'm going to tell you how. I mean, just fighting with their husbands constantly. You are not going to change your husband with your tongue. You're going to change him with your behavior. Let me give you an example. I come home from work, and it's been a bad day. And I'm thinking about only one thing. Me. All right? And I deserve it. I have suffered all day working in the mission. Things have gone bad. I've had to fight the devil, hell, and everything else. And I'm coming home, and things need to be right. And I come home, and they're not right. Now, usually my house is clean, and usually there is food ready and everything else. But I come home this particular day, and it looks like Godzilla came through my house. And I say, honey, what's the deal? I mean, I'm out there fighting the devil all day, and I'm supposed to come home to an orderly house. And she spins around and looks at me with a fire in her eyes that would make a grown man run back to his mom. And she starts, what do you mean coming in here? You don't know what I've got to deal with. And you out there all day, hey, doing this. And yeah, you went to lunch. Yeah, and you did this. But I'm stuck here and I'm homeschooling. And the moment she does that, it's the fight is on. Now, I know none of you ever deal with anything like this. But the fight is on. And guess what? Both parties are justified in their own mind. They are totally justified. And no one is ashamed for their ignorant, foolish, ungodly actions. But now, let's replay it. And I come home and I'm still all about me. King me. And I come home, the house is messed up, and there's no food, and Rowan is crying, and all these things are going on. And I say, look, I mean, I'm out there all day preaching the gospel, doing things. At least I could come home and have a little peace. I'm making this up because I never do things like this. And my wife turns around and she goes, Paul, I am so sorry. One sister has, I've been on the phone almost all day trying to figure out a problem with a sister in the church, and Rowan is sick, and I've just had to let things go. And I'm sorry, just give me time and I'll get things in order. When she does that, this is what I do. I go outside, go into my workshop, find oak is usually the preferable wood that you want. But hickory also is a good wood to use. And you take it with both hands like this, And then you go, wham, 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 wham. And then you crawl back into the house and you ask for forgiveness. Look what she's done. She couldn't beat me with her words, but she beat me with her behavior. She heaped burning hot coals on my head with her godliness. Do you see that? Now, men, it's the same way. Man, if we could ever get a brother to come up here. He teaches on marriage in Norm Wakefield. And he was teaching me one day, and he said, Paul, when I'm preaching, and God's really moved or something's happened, and I drive home, he said, I'm preparing myself because I know when I open that door, I know I am hoping my wife will realize I've just come from a tremendous week of battle and that she'll meet me at the door and just be a blessing. He said, Paul, I know it's usually not going to happen. I know some things are going to be going on. Now you can say it's the devil, that the devil's got my whole house upset and my wife's going to open the door and she's going to be immediately telling me problems. She's going to ignore my needs and everything else. And he said, but it's not the devil so much as it is God. And what God is doing is He's allowing the devil to work to stir up my house so that when my wife opens that door and she does not receive me with pleasantness and she doesn't appreciate the battles I've been through, God is giving me at that point an opportunity to be like Jesus. To love like Jesus. You see that? So see, it goes both ways. Now let me give you an illustration. If you go to Europe, one of the things that you always got to see are castles. I mean, they're just unbelievable. There's something unusual about castles. The front door of a castle is like really big on the first floor. I mean, it's huge. I mean, 25 guys walking abreast can go through that door. It's a big door. What's amazing, you go up to the second floor and the stairway is about this big. And the door at the top is like this tall, like this big. You're like, man, if that wasn't an architectural oversight, why did they do that? Well, here's the way. Here's the reason. Let's say that there's a bunch of people in the castle, and they're in there locked up because there's an army, a gigantic army outside the castle. Well, that gigantic army, it storms that door, the first door, and 25 men leaning against that door, and they push it in, and here comes the whole army, floods into that first floor. And let's say there's only 10 people in that castle. But the army's 300 men. And they've just busted through the door. All the people in the castle, the 10 people, they run up that narrow stairway. Now here's what you need to understand. That stairwell is so narrow that it just takes one man with a lance at the top of that thing to hold off an army of 300 men. Because all 300 of them can't get up there. Only one at a time. I just described your marriage. Women, your husband is sitting in his castle, and he's just having a good old time. He's sitting in his lazy boy chair. He's watching football or a hunting program. And you have had enough. All right? So you storm the castle door. And what does he do? He does what every man ought to do. He runs. He runs straight up those stairs. I like what one man said one time. There's these 3 men and they're all talking about, my wife, she submits to me and my wife submits to me. And this other guy goes, you guys are a bunch of wimps. When my wife talks to me, she gets down on her hands and knees. They said, really? Yeah, she gets down on her hands and knees and she looks under the bed where I'm hiding and she says, are you going to come out and fight like a man or stay there all day? But here's the thing, wife. Your husband sees you, sees that double-edged sword coming out of your mouth, and he runs up. And he's got his lance, and you coming up that stairwell. And you're coming up that stairwell fighting with him. That tongue of yours is moving like a weed eater. And the whole time you're giving him the rights. You're just telling him the way it ought to be. The whole time you're doing that, you're also praying. God, why don't you help me with this man? God, why don't you help me with this man? God, why don't you do what you need to do? Why don't you change this man? God, I can't understand. And every time you say, God, why don't you help me with this man? God's going, get out of the way. And you're like, oh, I'm not getting out of the way. And you just keep fighting. God, why don't you get up here and help? God goes, there's room for only one. Get out of the way. And you won't get out of the way. Because you'd rather just wag that big dangerous tongue of yours than you would get out of the way. I thought about writing a book. I'm still thinking about writing a book to wives on how to act in such a way so that God will kill your husband. I'm just afraid it'll be a bestseller and we'll have a lot of men dying. But you remember what God says in Romans 12, give place to the wrath of God. Get out of the way. It says, don't deal with your enemies. Don't fight fire with fire. If someone does evil to you, don't do evil back. Just get out of the way. And what God is telling a woman is this. Continue in your godliness. Continue in your quiet spirit. Seek to honor Him as much as you can. And call out to me. And I will be your help in the day of trouble. God changes people. And this works the same way with husbands. Except more so. Husbands, you are called. The wife is never really called to be an example to her husband. But the man is called to be an example to his wife. You want your wife to change? Be an example. Be an example. And brothers, you know, I hate teaching this because it just points out my own errors. But I'm not teaching it because I live it perfectly. I'm teaching it because it's true and I need to hear it every day. And so do you. And ladies, it's the same thing. So do you. You need to hear this. He says, without a word, by the behavior of their wives, as they observe your chaste and respectful behavior. Again, look at this. Your adornment must not be merely external. And the word merely in Greek is not there. But he's saying your adornment must not be external, braiding the hair and wearing gold jewelry or putting on dresses. You know, this comes out of, in a sense, of Proverbs. A woman without discretion, even a most beautiful woman without discretion, is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. And young guys, listen to me. Do not... If you are led into marriage because of the sensuality of the girl, you will hate yourself in the end. You will hate yourself. But if you're led into it by her virtue, her intelligence, her godliness, you will find a mate for life. Now, he says, but let it be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is precious in the sight of God. Women, I've seen women, act like street brawlers. Come on, you want to fight? Is that all you got? No, that's not the way they're supposed to be. A gentle and a quiet spirit is the thing that will most disarm your husband. Now, again, let me say this. I'm talking in regard to just a normal marriage with its normal problems. I'm not saying that a woman who has a violent husband who's putting her life in jeopardy ought to just stay there and be a punching bag. Not at all. And the pastors and elders should not just stand there and say, you need to go back to your husband. They need to protect this woman. She's a daughter of God. They need to treat her as their own daughter. And those pastors, if there's a sister in the church being abused by her husband, they need to stand in even if it means they get punched. That's what pastors do. Or it's what they're supposed to do anyway. Just find it amazing how many pastors will send women back to a horrible, abusive relationship and tell them to do the will of God and do nothing to protect them. Jesus never called us to that kind of absurdity. But in a normal relationship with our normal problems, just getting mad over nothing, like most of us do. Now, there's so much to say here. Let me say, it hurts me because this is like 7 days we could be talking just about this women thing. And let's go to the Song of Solomon. I want to talk to the young ladies, but this applies to everyone. Men, it would do you well to read the Song of Solomon. It would do me well because of all the beautiful things that is said here that to us seem just too goofy. But it's just because as men we're just so hardened. Look at the things that are found in the Song of Solomon. Verse 1 of chapter 4, how beautiful you are, my darling, how beautiful you are. Verse 7, you are altogether beautiful, my darling, and there is no blemish in you. All these types of things that are said that I fail to say. Because again, I think my wife is like me. Now, I want you to just look at something from the Song of Solomon again. Look at verse 9. You have made my heart beat faster, my sister, my bride. You have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes. There was a time when that was true. There was a time, guys, when you acted like peacocks strutting around just to get your wife to look at you. You saw that she looked at you and you almost fell over backwards. It's just like with the Lord, isn't it? When we first met the Lord, and if He showed us anything in His Word, we were so excited we didn't even know what to do. And now He shows us things we don't even want to hear. There's something terrible about being in a relationship when it turns common. Now, another thing I want you to look at here in verse 9. He says, you have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes, with a single strand of your necklace. Now, you say, Brother Paul, what does that mean? Well, first of all, let's look at it as with Christ and the believer. He says, you're altogether beautiful, my darling. Why? Because He shed His blood for her and cleansed her. Notice that He did not die for a perfect bride. He died for a soiled one, and He made her perfect. Husbands, that's a good thing, isn't it? It's a very good thing. Also, husbands, you think your wife doesn't love you like she should? Guess what? It's your fault. You say, why is it my fault? Listen to what the Bible says. We love Him because He loved us. It's not that we loved Him, but that He loved us. And because He loved us, we now love Him. That's the relationship between a man and his wife. A husband and a bride. The church loves Jesus, the church loves Jesus because Jesus loved her first. And the church was won by that love. Isn't that amazing? And he says, you have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes, with a single strand of your necklace. Here's the problem. She's a shepherd girl. Shepherd girls don't have necklaces. So look at what's going on here. Jesus looks down at His bride and says, you're beautiful. The necklace you have is beautiful. What you're clothed in is beautiful. And guess what? Everything she wears and everything she is clothed in came from Him. So He gave her her beauty. Now, same way, we give our wives their beauty. That's why He talks about washing your wife in the Word in Ephesians 5, and that Jesus is washing His bride in the Word in order to present her before Him as spotless. If a husband is not satisfied with his wife, it's his fault, because it's his job to wash her in the Word so that she becomes more spotless and more pleasing to him. It's just like when you invest in your son and he says basically nothing. I said, well, what'd you expect? When we invest little in our wives, we shouldn't demand much from them. Have you ever heard the story about the 8-cow wife? I love this story. This man in Africa, if you want to get a wife, you got to kind of pay for her. You got to give her dad a bunch of cows or chickens or whatever. Well, this one man, he had this daughter, and she wasn't very pretty. And he's like, I'm not even going to get a chicken for this daughter of mine. And she's not pretty at all. And one day, this guy shows up, and he goes, I want to marry your wife. Marry your daughter. I want to marry your daughter. And he goes, what? He says, I want to marry your daughter. Dad goes, you're kidding, right? No, I want to marry your daughter. And he's like thinking, I wonder how much I'm going to have to pay this guy so he'll marry my daughter. And he goes, well, what will you give for my daughter? And the highest price you could give was 8 cows. That was the highest price. And so this young guy goes, 8 cows. The dad goes, what? Have you seen my daughter? I mean, what do you mean 8 cows? He said, no, I want to pay 8 cows for your daughter. And so he did. And it was the talk of the town. The talk of everybody. I mean, that's unheard of, an 8-cow wife. Guess what? She came to be known throughout all the land as the 8-cow wife. And guess what? She became also the most respected woman in all the tribes. Someone valued her, and she lived up to that value.